Sure.
Hi everyone, I'm Rahana.
And I'm Celine.
And welcome to another episode at the
We Are Podcast.
So today we are back in person. Celine is doing great.
Yes.
And we are here to talk about some things including Afghanistan, Taliban, ISIS, some natural disasters that have been happening in the U.S. lately.
Elijah McClain. People threatening people with zip ties. Interesting stuff. Plane crashes, senators, ski resorts. So, I think we're ready to get started. Oh, by the way, I just want to add, never mind. Ignore that.
Alright, so our first update is in relation to something that we've been talking about a lot for the past couple of weeks.
Yes.
And it is the U.S.'s withdrawal from Afghanistan. So the U.S. troops, all U.S. troops, have been fully withdrawn from Afghanistan, halting America's longest war in history, which lasted around 2 decades.
That's a long war.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a stepping stone, kind of, in our country's history.
It is. It's progress, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's controversial. It's a controversial decision, though.
I think the main thing, though, is that actually he has majority support from both parties for withdrawing it. I mean, his handling, maybe not so much, but his just the decision to take them out is good. And so the footage was released by the DoD, Department of Defense, recently. And it was an image and a video of Major General Chris Donahue, who was boarding a C-17 to depart from Kabul, the last U.S. soldier to leave. And this was of great news, but for the Taliban also, they considered this a victory because I guess they kind of saw it as like a superior, like the U.S. quit in a sense. I don't know.
I don't think it was necessarily quitting. I think it was more like, we're done there. We have nothing more to accomplish there, right? Like,
yeah, nothing better is going to come out of it.
Right, like, we can't really accomplish anything there. So, I think it was just, like, the end of something. It kind of marked the end of, like, a long war that we didn't need to fight.
But they thought of it as a celebration, the Taliban. And so they walked across the airway runway and triumph, and you know, they were happy about it. But along with this, the U.S. officials acknowledged that not everyone could get out, especially our Afghan interpreters and allies. So over 20,000 Afghans have applied to a visa since the U.S. decided to withdraw. But in light of that, only 5,000 of those visas have been processed due to like the travel restrictions that were placed on the U.S. during the Biden or Trump administration.
Right.
Yeah. And so the number rises, like, overall, including all the interpreters and family, of over 100,000 Afghans who want to be relocated to the U.S. in parts of the U.S. The journal estimates. The State Department also estimates that 200 Americans who wanted to leave have also been left behind. And these aren't troops, because all the troops have been withdrawn, but these could be people a part of the embassy, etc.
Yeah.
And so many interpreters have just not been able to get out as they should. There are people that are so desperate just to give their families better lives, you know, give them more opportunities. You know.
It's a tough situation.
So as of August 15th, which is a while ago, I assume the number has rose, as many as 100,000 Afghans were still in Kabul.
Wow.
So it's sad for them because, of course, they did help our community.
Yeah, and I think we are trying to help them, but it's a tough situation where you can only do so much, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
So, actually, are you done with that one?
Oh, not yet. Sorry.
Okay.
So, many of the people, including a 36-year-old interpreter who helped rescue Joe Biden when he was a senator in 2008, when he was stranded in the Afghan Valley, he is still there hiding from the Taliban. There's also one last thing I'd like to mention. Like, with the Taliban moving here, there has been lots of concerns about, like, from, like, conservative groups about having Afghans move here. I've seen interviews with people talk about them thinking that they're going to bring terrorism, bring Islam, which they consider bad, which I just want to say right now is factually incorrect and wrong, because Islam doesn't define a person. The actions carried out by like Taliban and ISIS, those are from people, not the religion. Number two, the Afghan people have helped the U.S., so they're allies. They've gone through intensive background security checks, and so they're completely safe to be here. And anyone who like is introduced to an Afghan immigrant or refugee, please like accept them and make sure they feel welcome.
And I think it's unfair to make a generalization, I can't speak, about a whole large group of people just based on like a couple people and their actions. So
yeah, that's it.
All right, so actually I have the next update is similar to that. It's actually about the Taliban. Women in Kabul actually staged a protest for equal rights. So as we've talked about in previous news updates, the Taliban, when they were last in power, they did not give women like equal rights at all. Women weren't allowed to have like the right to education. They weren't treated as fairly, and they just didn't get the opportunities they should have been given. So a group of Afghan women who were activists staged a small protest in Kabul on Friday. So the group of women were called the Women's Political Participation Network, and they marched in front of Afghanistan's finance ministry. They chanted and made slogans basically saying like their ideas that they wanted to be included in government and treated like they were actually part of society, like an important part of society, and they wanted to be given like constitutional laws. And the gathering was small, but it was like unusual like for that group of people to like stand up to the Taliban, so it was a good thing that they were kind of voicing this and protesting without using violence too. It was peaceful.
And I think that's really brave of them, because so many women are terrified of the Taliban.
Oh yeah, and actually that's a good point, because a lot of women are just staying at home. A lot of women did actually want to take part in the protest, but they were way too afraid, which makes sense. It's justified that they're afraid. Some women have been ordered from their workplaces, and though Taliban leaders have publicly tried to make it clear that they will give women equal rights and access to education, not sure if that's even true. Many people fear that there will be a return of the same policies that were there years before, and women would have like no role in society basically. So a lot of women are staying home. There was also a protest the day before the one in Kabul that happened in Herat, and women in the Herat protest held huge signs saying, quote, "No government can be long-lasting without the support of women. Our demands, the right to education and the right to work in all areas," which is definitely very justified. Like, women do play a large, important, and prominent role in society, as they should. Lena Haydari, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, who was a protester at the Herat protest or demonstration, said the quote, "Rights and achievements of women, which we have worked and fought for over 20 years, must not be ignored under Taliban rule. I want to say that I was forced to stay at home for the crime of being a student 20 years ago." So a lot of people, like a lot of women, were forced out of their workplaces and not allowed to like work. And actually, in the early months after the Taliban had just started taking over now, women were, like, targets of attacks. Like, for example, 3 women journalists were murdered in March of this year, and 9 women working in the offices of Azizi Bank were ordered to leave while their male relatives took over their jobs.
That's
so sad. So stuff like this is what's instigating these protests, because people fear this is going to happen again when the Taliban has full control. But there's also that fear that, like, of standing up, right? And I think it's very brave of them, and I hope they're treated like they should be, you know?
Even though that's very unlikely.
Even though it is unlikely, but...
We're hoping something will happen.
All right, so...
Yes. Along with the lines of Taliban, we have an update about ISIS, which, in case you didn't know, ISIS was basically like a break-off group of Al-Qaeda.
Which is another terrorist group.
Yeah, Al-Qaeda was the group that instigated the 9/11 attack, which is an awful attack. We're going to make a news update about it.
We are, because it's actually happening pretty soon, right? 9/11 is like in a week.
Yeah, we're going to make an update about that very soon. But... in light of all this, there was an ISIS supporter that was killed in New Zealand by police after he started stabbing shoppers in a terrorist attack.
Whoa. So
basically what happened was that this man was Sri Lankan. He was a supporter of the ISIS ideology and, like, you know, thought process, I guess.
Yeah.
And he was actually, like, a known national security threat, meaning
Oh.
that he was under constant surveillance by several, like, agencies and people.
Okay.
So on Friday at 2:40, this man obtained, like, a knife from a grocery store.
What?
And started stabbing all the shoppers around him.
Oh my god.
But luckily, no one died. There are some
God.
people that are in, like, critical condition. I think there's about 3 in critical condition. I'll tell you in, like, 30 seconds. But basically, he was shot and killed at the scene of the crime within 60 seconds of beginning it because he was under constant surveillance, which is really good.
So he's, like, a danger to the public, basically.
Yeah. So 6 people were injured, 3 people in critical condition, like I said. The attacker came to New Zealand in 2011 and became a person of interest in 2016. And some of you might be wondering, like, if they're constantly surveilling him, then why don't they just put him in jail? But they unfortunately could not because they didn't have enough, like, evidence and
like,
stuff.
clear of it. Yeah, because you can't arrest someone without having, like, the proper evidence.
Yeah. But Ardern, who was the prime minister, she was also the one we talked about, like, a couple weeks ago, or maybe last week, who did the full nationwide lockdown for Corona. But she did not share the man's identity, saying that he faced court in the past and she was personally aware of him. She said, quote, "I acknowledge that the situation poses questions about whether the police could have acted faster or done more. Quote, I am confident we have done everything within the law. We are doing everything we could to monitor him. The fact that we were able to put him down or react within 60 seconds shows that." So, Auckland was already under a level 4 lockdown because of Corona. They had one case, the country's strictest level. And it was in the Lynn Mall location, and the supermarket chain was called Countdown. They were, quote, devastated by the attack, and New Zealand has been, like, especially alert for attacks because ever since March 15th, 2019, when a white supremacist killed 51 people in 2 mosques in the city of Christchurch.
Oh my gosh.
They have been, like, ultra aware of terror attacks, crimes,
definitely.
etc. So, Ardern actually said, quote, something I was saying earlier, I kind of took out from this was, the man alone who was responsible for this violence was responsible, not a faith. And I think that's a good point to bring up.
It is a good point.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, ISIS obviously is a terrorist group, but it's not Islam.
It's not the religion, it's the group of people who are turning the religion into something that it's not, right?
I mean, I think throughout history, you can see how interpretations of things have just completely demeaned what they actually are.
Such an extreme and false interpretation, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
yeah.
Wow. All right. So, are we good to move on? Okay. So, the next news update, we both kind of did a little bit of research on this. So, it's going to be a little, like both of us will be talking. But, this one is about Hurricane Ida, which, we talked about it in the past news update. It made landfall in Louisiana, like...
Yeah, as a Category 4.
Yeah.
And it basically... people thought that it would have a lot of effect on Louisiana, but in fact it did. But it also had so much effect on the East Coast, causing billions of dollars in damage, repair, and infrastructure.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think some of the most prominent after effects of it were in New York and New Jersey, Big Apple, and I think it's called the Garden State, but I might be wrong.
I have no idea, to be honest.
So... It left houses destroyed, basements flooded, roads blocked.
That's awful.
It tore across 8 states, specifically causing flooding in New York and New Jersey, resulting in at least 46 deaths from people being drowned up in cars or basements, etc. So it's awful, and it caused so much flooding, which is devastating because people in their cars, drowned in their cars. Children could have drowned in basements.
It's awful.
But in addition to that, there's so much damage, and some people don't have money to pay for it, so it's just this huge issue.
Oh, yeah.
I actually have before and after pictures of it.
Oh, really?
If I
and again, if this is on Anchor, we apologize. So the glare is so bad.
It is bad. I don't even
think you can see.
Oh my god.
Where did you get those pictures from?
I will cite the sources, but
just click on the source and you'll see the pictures.
Maybe you can see the after a little bit. That's the after. And you can see how it's drenched in muddy water.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in at least 20 homes in Malika Hill, which is like an area I believe in New Jersey, was leveled by powerful twisters, and majority of the victims in New Jersey were drowned.
You said victim.
Victims in New Jersey were drowned after their vehicles were caught in flash flooding, which was another huge effect of this hurricane.
Hurricanes just instigate a ton of different storms, like in natural disasters.
Yeah, and actually, like a 2-year-old and his parents drowned in a basement apartment in Queens, New York.
That's awful.
And I think one of the biggest effects of the hurricane was that it knocked out power for over 1 million people throughout Louisiana and like.
And that's tough. That's tough.
It also brought a subway system, which if you don't know, subway systems are like underground train type things, and they're super big in New York. Like everyone owns a subway pass, pretty much, and that brought a subway system to a standstill, and that's really sucky. But yeah. The last little part of mine is that Biden, in light of this, actually was going to drive by or fly through Louisiana, and he's actually going to visit New Jersey soon too.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
So he's gonna do that. He said, "quote I promise we're gonna have your back," and he wants to really go through New Orleans and New Jersey and look at the people whose electricity got knocked out. He said, quote, "The nation is here to help as the Federal Emergency Management Agency worked with the National Guard and the Red Cross to help overcome the damage and destruction." So he also used this, I think, as like a kind of political tactic in a sense.
Oh, really?
Because he used like this destruction of the electricity pylons, which are like these electricity things, to illustrate how his multi-billion-dollar plan to like put power cables underground.
Right. The infrastructure plan?
I think it's part of it, yeah.
Oh, right.
And so he said, since the power things got damaged, he used it as kind of like a selling point for his idea to move the power cords underground. And he said, quote, "It seems that we can save a whole lot of money, a whole lot of pain for our constituents if we rebuild it back, and build it back in a better way." So that was kind of like a selling point for him.
Yeah,
too.
It was. Yeah. All right.
That's pretty smart on his part. But
It is. Another Louisiana nursing home resident who was being held at a facility, like a shelter, because a lot of people need shelter from the hurricane, died. So, yeah.
That was very,
monotonously
brutal.
I know.
You were, like, monotone. Like, yeah, they died.
Yeah. It's sad. I'm sorry. But, there's being an investigation put on for this facility, actually. So the woman was pronounced dead in Louisiana on Friday morning. And Dr. Jonathan Hunter said, quote, "Her death was very much will be considered storm-related, but he has requested an autopsy to be performed," which is like an examination of like the dead body, basically, to find out the cause of death and like what happened and why the person died. So this shelter or facility, I'll just call it shelter, is actually a warehouse in the town of Independence, and there so many people have flooded the shelter.
Missouri, right?
That's
Independence, Missouri?
I think so. But I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, probably. That sounds right.
It might have been Indianapolis.
Like, residents from 7 nursing homes came to this shelter, so they're having a lot of issues with, like, power and sanitary conditions that are failing because they have so many people and it's during a hurricane, right? It's a vulnerable time. Electricity went out more than once, and the oxygen concentrators stopped working, so that caused a lot of issues. The state's health department said it heard reports about, quote, "deteriorating conditions in the facility," and inspectors arrived 4 days after, like, the facility started taking in and people for shelter, but they were expelled and kept from doing a full assessment. So they had to assess whether the conditions in the shelter were like appropriate for the people there, but they weren't able to actually conduct this investigation. So State Attorney General Jeff Landry, who's a Republican, announced that the state's Justice Department is launching a full investigation into the matter to, like, figure out kind of, like, what's going on there, Okay. And actually 4 people in that shelter were initially reported dead before that 5th person. And when questioned about the warehouse... Ignore that. Sorry.
You good then?
What?
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm pretty much done. But yeah, there were 4 people who died before. But people are saying like we only had 5 deaths within the 6 days, and normally with 850 people, you'll have a couple a day. So we're actually doing well. But there are investigations to figure out like what happened and whether the conditions are okay. So
yeah, all right. So that's it for our first half. In our second half, we'll be talking more about Elijah McClain, zip ties, plane crashes,
Senate stuff,
and then
Caldor snow blowers and fires. So keep tuned, and we will see you in the second half. All right, bye.
Welcome back from the break.
Hello. Anyway, all right.
The first update for the second half is about Elijah McClain. And we go super in-depth on his story. And if you want to hear more about it, because I'm just going to barely, give an overview of it, go check out our Black Lives Matter episode. It's probably one of my favorite episodes we've done.
I really like that episode, because it's an important topic. We talk a lot about, I
feel like it's so interesting, too.
Yeah, George Floyd, Elijah McClain. So we have his whole background. He was such a good person. Anyways.
So, he was a 23-year-old young African-American male whose story was brought to light during the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020, although I think the incident happened in 2019.
I still feel like it's less popular than the rest. It should be more universal. More people should know about it.
But anyway, he was walking home from a convenience store to get his brother an iced tea, and he was actually wearing a ski mask because he has anemia, and he said it helps him from being cold because it was at night. But people called and said he looked suspicious, to which the police responded and came there. The police said, quote, "I have a right to stop you because you are being suspicious."
Oh my god, he was walking. That's so sad.
I know, he brought up iced tea for his brother. So basically what they did was they pinned him. They said he was resisting arrest.
I mean, who wouldn't, right? Because...
Yeah.
Especially
and he was actually saying things like, "I can't breathe and I'm just different." The police also claimed during the hassle that he was trying to grab their gun, but there is no visual evidence of that. The Aurora department said, quote, "Our officers did nothing wrong." And when the paramedics arrived, because he was, quote, resisting arrest, they injected him with ketamine, a drug used to sedate fighty people.
And the fact that he's even being arrested, what did he do? Nothing.
I don't think that should have ever been a thing. And also, the dosage of ketamine that they gave to him, the sedative drug, was meant for someone over 70 pounds his size.
Whoa!
So they overdosed him with ketamine.
Not only did they give it to him in the first place, they overdosed him. Wow.
Or ketamine. Did I it's ketamine or something.
I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce drugs.
I like medicine a lot. It's my type of thing, but I think it's ketamine. No, I'm pretty sure it's ketamine, actually.
You know what?
Just Google it.
I'll Google it right now.
While I talk. Anyway, he was rushed to the hospital and later declared brain dead and then taken off life support because...
It's ketamine.
Ketamine. Yeah.
So I think you were right.
Ketamine. Yeah. Okay, so it's ketamine.
All right.
He was later declared brain dead and then taken off life support. And then at first the district attorney refused to file charges in 2019 when it happened, citing inconclusive evidence. But when all the protests started happening in June of 2020, the governor of Colorado actually said that there would be a further investigation and designated the attorney general to investigate. And then on Wednesday, the Colorado Attorney General announced a 32-count indictment, which is a formal accusation of a crime,
right,
by a jury or someone of authority, against 2 current and 1 former police officer, as well as the 2 paramedics involved in the incident. And according to the indictment, he was unconscious, suffered hypoxia, which, in case you didn't know, is a lack of oxygen.
Okay.
And has physical and mental impaired conditions after the officer placed him in several carotid holds. Carotid is carotid artery around your throat and stuff.
Yeah.
And his mother, Shanine McClain, says her son is innocent, a consul, who would never do anything wrong. She has been praying for justice. She said, quote, "I had done everything in my power as a single mom to make sure he wasn't a statistic," which I think is such a powerful quote.
It is.
Because I think a lot of people say Black people are statistically more prone to violence and crime.
Right.
And saying that he wasn't a statistic, he was more than a statistic, kind of goes to show that
statistics don't define any race or any person or any human being, right?
That.
Like,
he really was innocent, she said. He also spoke with his father, saying that we can't get my son back, but we can hold them accountable.
Yeah. And I think it's something you can't change, but you can work towards making it better in the future so it doesn't happen again, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So that's about Elijah McClain. If you want to hear more in depth about his story what his family members said,
and also like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and a lot of other people and just the entire movement as a whole. So
check out our Black Lives Matter.
Yes, please do. Okay, so the next one, this one is kind of funny, I'm not gonna lie.
I'm so curious about this.
So an Arizona father threatens to zip tie principal after his son is told to quarantine. Okay, so there's this man, and his name is Rishi Rambaran. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I hope I am. He was 40 years old, right? Like a grown adult who should be able to deal with situations. But so his son was told to quarantine because he came into contact with someone who had COVID-19. And by the way, this happened at Mesquite Elementary School, an elementary school where kids aren't vaccinated. So I think, like, if you're around someone who has COVID, it's just like the right thing to do to like quarantine yourself, right? And the Vail School District's COVID policy follows public health guidance issued by Pima County, the county they live in. And this requires students to quarantine at home for at least a week after exposure, right? So they're literally just following the rules of the county and doing what's right. So the kid's dad, along with the kid and 2 other men, arrived at the school to protest the quarantine policy, and the men told the principal, whose name was Diana Vargo, by the way, that they would call local law enforcement or conduct a citizen's arrest. Like, they were literally trying to arrest the principal.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a citizen's arrest. That's stupid.
Yeah. And they're like, the dude's like, if my kid is not allowed to return to school right away, I'm conducting a citizen's arrest. And then one of the men, Kelly Walker, live streamed the whole thing on Instagram and said Rishi, who's the dad, had called him there in case he needed backup.
What? They're not
like, what is he gonna do?
Like, what?
Get into some fist fight with zip ties? And then the third man, who has remained unnamed, stood in the doorway with a handful of zip ties. So if you don't know, zip ties are like plastic fasteners. I can't really describe them, but they're not your usual weapon. Can you pull up a picture?
I'm gonna pull up.
And if you're listening to this on Anchor, look them up if you don't know what they are, because it's kind of like, what the heck? It's not your usual weapon, right?
These are zip ties. Like, you use them for science fair project. Like, bro.
I don't even know what they're used for, honestly. Like, and Walker, Kelly Walker, who's one of the men who was there during the incident, he wasn't the father, but he was the backup. He said, quote, when this kind of coercion and bullying is perpetrated by school administrators breaking the law, a citizen's arrest is an option worth looking into. And he even compared what happened at the elementary school to Rosa Parks in her struggle for racial freedom and, like, can you believe that?
Okay.
Not only that.
How is, trying to not kill other children
and trying to keep people safe. And not only that, he also compared mask mandates to the Holocaust. So, this dude...
That's just disgusting. That's so gross.
It is. It's awful. So, this backup dude, Walker, he had a lot of views. Like, he thought the election was stolen, and he just had a lot of very controversial views. Like, he thought mask mandates were, like, compared to the Holocaust, which is totally not true at all.
Yeah.
And, Rishi, who's the father, said in a video, quote, I'm headed to Mesquite Elementary School right now, where a friend just notified me and some others that his son was indiscriminately taken to the office to be quarantined because supposedly someone had decided he, but not other kids in this classroom, were exposed to COVID. This is actually Walker who said that.
Yeah, sorry.
Not the dad. The backup. I've been talking about Walker. Okay. So, and they shoved a mask on his face, wouldn't let him call his parents, and now his dad is there. The school is blatantly breaking the law, blatantly going against the will of the people. I think this community has expressed that they're going to have this kind of bullying of our kids, these kinds of scare tactics. Okay. This is kind of funny.
No comment. Just
yeah, no comment. So the principal listened to them because the principal has dealt with this stuff before. All principals have dealt with this stuff before. They listened to them patiently, and They tried to basically force her into reversing the quarantine order, and she's just like, no, like, I'm not going to do that, right? So, she asked them to leave the premises of the school. They didn't leave. And then she said she would call the police, and the three of them left before the cops came. Yeah. And Rishi, who's the father, was taken into custody soon after, but was released. But, so, this is not, the sad thing about this is definitely not the first time stuff like this has happened. Yeah. Where, I think it's hard on teachers and principals, like, getting threatened for doing what they think is best for the students, right? So, like, yes. The issue, it has taken place all over the country. Like, for example, in Pennsylvania, a dispute over masking requirements for elementary school students. This is elementary school students, right? Recently resulted in death threats that led one board member to quit. Can you believe that?
Oh, was that? I think
you might have did an update about that. Yeah, I talked about that last week. So check out the last update if you want to hear more about that. So a California parent allegedly assaulted his daughter's teacher last month after seeing their child walking out of the school with a mask. And in late August, a 50-year-old Florida man was arrested and charged with aggravated child abuse after a dispute over masking with a female high school student turned physical. Teachers have had their masks ripped off by people and have been the targets of relentless abuse. So, they're trying to do what's best for their community and their kids.
Just listen to your districts and don't pick a fight.
Even if you disagree with it, it's not your place to, like, go out there and, like, try to arrest them.
And please, like, educate your stuff about, like, corona in general, because there's evidence and, like, proof and scientific proof that this is something that everyone should be part of, no matter, like, what party you are.
And this is a hard time for everyone, especially teachers, I feel like, because they're probably facing backlash and principals and administrators, so...
Yeah.
Whew.
Anyway.
All right, next one.
Next update. So a plane actually crashed in Connecticut, and that's what this update is about. Oh. So a small jet crashed into a building in Connecticut shortly after taking off, killing 4 people. Oh, which is awful. I mean, it took off just before 10 a.m. from the Robertson Airport before crashing into the building at Trump Inc., a manufacturing company.
Inc.? Okay.
Yeah, and it was in Farmington. That was said by Farmington Police Lieutenant Tim McKenzie. So it appears there was some type of mechanical failure during the takeoff, meaning something went wrong with, like, the plane's functionings that caused the crash, he said. And in the plane, which was a Cessna Citation 560X, was headed to Dare County into Regional Airport in Manteo, North Carolina, the Federal Aviation Administration said. That was a mouthful.
It was.
Anyway. 2 pilots and 2 passengers were killed, Mackenzie said. Their names were not immediately released. But basically, after the crash happened, it set off chemical fires in the building, which raged for all of 20 minutes. And
that's awful.
I don't think anyone in the building died, but there have been 2 employees who are suffering injuries that the company said were not serious, according to officials. Okay. So everyone in the building has been accounted for, but the chemical... They were, like, raging. They were growing, but luckily it was
for 20 minutes straight. That's a long time.
And luckily they were able to
contain it,
yeah.
That's good.
But I think something that I read, I didn't write it down, but I read that while they were, like, looking for, like, the victims in the planes, they saw, like, parts of their bodies on the lawn.
Oh!
That's a little yikesy.
This is awful.
Yeah, but that's that.
I'm glad it was contained at the very least, but still, it's a sad. There's so many tragic things happening in the world. God.
I know, right?
Okay, so the next, are we ready to?
Yes, we are.
So the next news update is not really tragic, thank God. No natural disasters, no people dying. Okay, so Senate Democrats assemble with wish list of tax hikes to fund the reconciliation bill. So the reconciliation bill, we've talked about that so much along with the infrastructure bill. So just check out our past episodes if you want to know more about it, but it's very expensive and the Democrats need a way to, like, fund this bill and get the money, right, for this spending bill. And some of the methods they want to implement involve, like, raising taxes, but some of these stuff I'm going to talk about, it's definitely not final. It's just ideas. Like, it might not necessarily actually happen, right?
Yeah.
But Let's see here. So some of these things include raising the corporate tax rate from 21% to a higher rate. So the corporate tax rate is the percentage of tax income businesses or legal entities have to pay. So like if there's a company, if there's a company and they make this amount of income, they have to pay a percentage of their income in taxes, and when it's raised, they have to pay more money in taxes, right?
Yeah.
So, like, corporations are like Google, Apple, Microsoft, or smaller corporations, you know. Another thing they would do is tax stock buybacks. So stock buybacks are when companies buy back shares of their own stock. So you can invest in stocks from companies. So stocks come in shares, and shares are like the amount of that stock that you get, right, that you invest in. So people can invest in these stocks. So if a company has a certain number of shares that investors buy, they can buy these shares back, or they can just buy their own shares that are already in the open market. So if a company so this drives up the price of the stock and increases demand, because when the company buys back their own shares off the market or makes an offer to some of their shareholders, which are people who have bought shares from them, the percentage of ownership held by each investor increases because the number of outstanding shares decreases. So outstanding shares are like the total number of stocks held by shareholders. And when you have less shareholders or less stocks in the open market, the percentage of like the ownership from those shareholders that you do have increases, so you make more. That was really complicated.
That was complicated.
I don't even know why I'm explaining that process, because it's not even that relevant. But anyways, so there would be a tax when companies try to buy back their own shares or buy back shares that are on their market, right? So this would apply to companies that buy a certain amount of stock. Like once they buy this amount of stock, they would have to get taxed on that, right? So sorry if that was really complicated. So they also want to create a, quote, CEO pay disparity, which would mean companies with chief executives that make more than a certain percentage of the average worker's pay would have to pay taxes. So when they make so much more than the average worker's pay, they would have to pay more taxes. Like there would be a benchmark.
So there would be like a higher percent, like ratio of taxes that they would have to pay.
Yeah, and there would be a benchmark where, you know. Okay. And then there's a rate currently that is 37% for the top personal income tax rate, which is if you make more than $523,600, you have to pay 37% of your income in taxes. But they wanted to raise this to 39.6%, so like raising it 2.6%, right?
Which is a lot for some people. That's like thousands of dollars.
Yeah. So if this were to become enacted, it would make people who have above the income I just talked about before, they would have to pay more taxes than they normally do now. So on top of this, they want to establish a minimum corporate tax rate of 15% of a corporation's, quote, book income. So book income is the amount of income corporations like Apple, Google, Microsoft, whatever, publicly report on their financial statements. Okay. So the rate of this taxes would apply even after taking certain deductions into consideration. So corporate organizations would have to pay more taxes, basically. And then, so for now, DC insiders remain skeptical how many of these proposals will actually be enacted, right? And James Lucier, who's a managing director at Capital Alpha, said, quote, "It's just a laundry list of proposals with no price tag attached. It hardly seems like a definite plan to do anything. They will not have a consensus within the Democratic caucus," Charles Myers said. So a lot of people are skeptical that this is actually going to happen, but they are considering, like, they need a way to pay, so they're considering some of these methods, like raising taxes, but, you know, we'll see.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of, like, increased spending this year because of Corona. And
And so that makes sense. Reconciliation bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was $3.5 trillion, right?
Yes, I believe
so that's a lot of money, so, yeah.
Anyway.
All right.
That's it. So, next news update is about Caldor Fire.
Yeah. So, the Caldor Fire, I have reported on before. Again, if you want to hear more about it, check our past news updates. It's in California, by the way. So,
Caldor,
California. Literally, I just feel like I know it because California and Caldor start with the same letter, so that's how I just associate it. Yeah. Honestly. But
Cal and Cal. Cali.
Cal. Okay. Why can I not find it? I'm so stupid.
It's at the bottom.
Bottom. Okay, you know what? Winging it. Okay. So, Lake Tahoe ski resorts near the Caldor fire, which, as I said, is in Northern California, are actually helping firefighters hold off the flames. And the way they are doing this, they're actually using snowmaking systems to protect the resorts and surrounding areas. So the snow blowers are being used to shoot water into the air. So when you have that liquid coming from snow blowers, the air has more moisture, which is good for a fire because it's so hot, and when it's more hot, the heat spreads, or the fire spreads more easily, so when you're getting that moisture in the air, it's easier to contain.
Okay.
So that's happening. So now I'm just going to talk more about like the Caldor fire in general. So tens of thousands of South Lake Tahoe residents.
I have a question about the ski resort.
Yes.
So are they doing that to like prevent the fire, or to like help their ski resort like maintain itself?
I think they're doing it for both. Like, they're trying to protect that area, but they're also trying to help the firefighters contain it too.
Okay, so they're trying to like do it so it doesn't get to that area?
Yeah. Okay. It does protect that area, but it's
Okay.
All right. So, tens of thousands of South Lake Tahoe residents were watching as Labor Day weekend began for a chance to return home because a lot of people have had to evacuate. So lighter winds and higher humidity continue to reduce the spread of flames. So there's a hopeful outlook on this, which is good. But it's still happening. So we'll see what happens with that. It's looking better now than it was before. But yeah.
Anyway, is that all?
I think that's it. I was planning on doing a longer one for that one, but
that's good. We were at 20 minutes.
I
feel like so. All of our sources will be linked in the bio.
Right.
I think today we used heavily CNN, NBC, NPR.
The Guardian.
Christian Post. Any
type
of that stuff. So they'll all be linked in the bio. Some of our quotes were from there as well.
Yes.
We've read some of their articles.
And again, check out our past news updates in the Black Lives Matter episode if you want to have more background on some of the stuff we talked about today.
Yeah, and then something to look forward to is we're going to make an episode about 9/11. We're going to continue doing our news updates, and we're also going to have an episode about high school relationships coming out this Friday.
So definitely with 9/11 coming up, it's a hard time for a lot of people. So we wanted to talk about it and kind of address what happened because I think it's important. So
yeah.
All right, do you have any fun news? Because I don't.
I don't think I'm going to skip it this week because I don't have any.
I feel like
Labor Day, my brother came home from
I'm
college.
going to Denver.
We might go kayaking. That's cool.
That is cool. I'm going to Denver to see my cousins Labor Day weekend.
All right.
And homecoming's in a week.
Homecoming's in a week.
That too. So, we might just do an update on an episode on homecoming after it happens.
Yeah, we could do that. Show everyone my dress.
All right,
that's all for today. Check out our socials in the bio, our website, and our email. Let us know if you want to see any types of episodes or anything in particular.
Right.
Let us know anything you want us to let us know. Check out our website. We have so many useful information on there, and that's all.
Thank you for listening. Bye. See ya.